Ujai, and welcome to the Gated Gates podcast. We're here with another episode. We thank you for tuning in. We know you could be doing a lot of different things on Thursday night, but here you are. And before we get started, we would like to acknowledge all the forces in the non-material. We'd like to acknowledge Nebnabalamusa Modadenebig, the founder of the Earth Center, and all the other great powers of the ancestors that are standing behind this great work. All the ancestors that are standing behind Kepta, all the ancestors that stand behind the traditions, all the ancestors that are standing behind all the temples back home. And we would like to acknowledge all the powers of nature, the deities, the genies, everything that's standing behind this great work. And with that, a word from our sponsor, Sauce Hot Sauce. Sauce Hot Sauce began in 2007 when a small group of students traveling in West Africa were trying to think of ways to support charitable projects. One of the students traveling happened to be an artisanal hot sauce chef, and right there, Sauce Hot Sauce was born. Since then, Sauce Hot Sauce has prided itself on making exceptional artisan hot sauces with high quality ingredients to support good causes. We continue to do this with the best and tastiest offerings of sauce flavors to date, with a focus on supporting displaced families in the Fada and Gurma region of Burkina Faso with the revenue from our sales. I was actually the person that they would call on to read in class because I was such a good reader, Jahzra.
Bro.
So while you're laughing at me, I was that person that the teacher would be like, "You're phenomenal at reading out loud." So take that. Sauce Hot Sauce is amazing. Try it. And it supports good causes, and it's very tasty, and it's very good. Try it.
Was that the spark of your acting career? The teacher telling you that you were good?
Why do you have to bring up my acting career?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It was not. The spark of my acting career was when I auditioned for To Kill a Mockingbird in high school. Yes. That was the spark of my acting career, since you asked.
Oh, well, how very deep.
It was very deep. To Kill a Mockingbird is a phenomenal novel. Hater. Okay, let's not make this about me. Everybody else is already making it about me. Let's jump right into rapid fire.
All right. So it's that time of week again. We have news articles. We have updates, current events, crazy scenarios playing out in the modern society, and let's start with this. New X-ray scans of 3,000-year-old Egyptian paintings reveal Pharaoh's hidden mysteries. So for some context, essentially, there have been contemporary artists that have been touching up an image of Ramses II, changing some of the garments, some of the things that were on him in the image, including even the beard itself. And they say that they may have added personal touches to conventional motives as their vision of the works changed. This was done through X-ray analysis of a 3,000-year-old painting, but however, how accurate is that truly at this time?
Wait, don't start the timer, right? Because I want to introduce our guests. So I apologize because I just was so excited from our guests laughing at me for stumbling on reading our sponsors. We are lucky to be joined by Jahzra Shemzura and Biksaa Nessebik. And Biksaa is joining us all the way across the ocean from England. And he's from the culture that colonized my people, her people, and his people. And he is also kind to grace us with his presence today.
It's going to be a great show.
Now he's colonizing the podcast.
Looking forward to it. I came here by bike and then I walked because I wouldn't miss this for anything, really. Yeah, in fact, we swam today too,
And yet they still don't know how to spice food.
But we do now. Sauce. Huh?
Okay, that's a good way.
So, I'm so sorry, Tuchana. So what else is new? That they're trying to steal Kemetic history and then try and rewrite it and try to make it something new?
Are you saying my people again?
Yeah, it's your people.
Okay.
Are they
just so we
British?
know.
Are they from like Oxford?
Just so we
Where are
know,
they from?
that's all.
Yeah.
We know where this is going, right?
exactly.
Don't we? Okay.
Are the largest museum of like Kemetic or even indigenous stuff in like England?
Yeah. Talk to your people. Let our
well,
people
it's
go.
between England, I think, New York, and France.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
If you look at your facts.
I mean, technically.
But let's get factual about it, shall
well,
we?
technically,
Yeah.
the New Yorkers are still English. Technically, I mean, can we really say they're separate from England? We
well-
speak English here in New
Well,
York.
let me add this to the
I don't know,
conversation.
you're in New York, right?
Experts in France said that ancient Egypt has no known word for art.
No known word for art.
Yeah,
That
and
was
that the
gonna be my
civilization may have
thought.
been extremely formal in its creative expression, including the workers of painters and funeral chapels. So that was something that came out of the French experts who were studying this, this
Are
piece
we?
of work.
What are we relying on the French for?
Well, you're talking about, different European colonizers.
No
I
one
mean-
goes to France.
Well, that's not necessarily true. But
you go to France? You ever
I
been to
wouldn't.
France?
I wouldn't go to
Why
France.
wouldn't you go to France?
Because I don't have a desire to go to France. What
Yeah,
am I gonna
no
go
one
do?
goes to
Look at the
France.
towers
Yeah,
for
the
what?
Eiffel Tower.
For what? Ça vaut son sein.
We're gonna go eat some bread and cheese and wine.
some escargot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, oui, oui.
oui, oui. Sacre bleu.
Oh, are we out? Are we out of time? Okay, next. Sorry.
Wait. We didn't even really discuss that one. All right. Our
It's okay.
producers
We're
letting us
getting
go
cut
on.
off. We're
Okay.
getting cut off.
Okay.
Jahzra looks like she wants to disappear into the wall. So let's just move on to the next one.
It's a good point about art, though.
Yeah. It is. It is.
We'll get
I
back to
mean-
it. Let's bring it up later. Let's bring it up later.
You bring it back. Let's try and focus in on these next couple of topics. And also, for those who are watching, make sure to like and comment. Share your opinions on these topics as well in the comment section. So, next topic: July is White History Month. So, we found a video of a man named Pastor Jesse Peterson, founder of the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, which empowers men and humanity to move forward. Apparently, and he says that we need to show our appreciation to Americans for the greatest country on this side of heaven. And we need to show white people appreciation for that. This is actually a black pastor, business owner, a social commentator, influencer.
What's his name again?
Jesse Peterson.
Okay, so Jesse Peterson is a real life Uncle Ruckus. Do you guys know who Uncle Ruckus is?
No.
From the Boondocks. He's like he's the black dude that loves white people.
With the eye.
With the eye. You guys never seen the Boondocks? God, this is gonna be an awful podcast.
Generation.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to explain to you guys. Please talk to the mic.
It's going to be a long show.
I know this is it's a little difficult for you, but please talk to the mic. Oh God, it's falling off.
Oh my God. But
Jahzra, you come from here too. I mean, you live here, right?
What, in the U.S.?
I mean, not now, but you did. Yeah. So you
Jahzra
should know
doesn't
this
live in the
lingo. You
US.
should know this
Yeah.
history.
The
You should know.
Boondocks?
Yeah, the Boond.
Yeah.
I mean, I
TV show?
don't.
Boonda.
I don't.
But okay, hold on. So Jesse Lee Peterson is just like the real life Uncle Ruckus. So like all he does is like tries to prop up white culture and then tries to like make hating himself interesting, and it's not.
well, here's the thing. I actually like Jesse Lee Patterson. Why? 'Cause I
Why?
think he's a troll.
He is a troll.
I think he's
He is
just
a troll.
messing with people and saying things that he knows are going to get people emotional just to incite some kind of conversation.
Oh, he is a house nigga. That's a good way to put it. He's a house nigga. He is a house nigga. Yeah, yeah.
But
You gotta
I like
watch
him, though.
out.
He's pretty funny. Have you ever actually watched his podcast?
You know who
he's
he looks
hilarious,
like?
bro.
You know who he looks like? Did you guys ever watch that show Space Ghost?
We said this last time.
No.
It's
That's
not
like
a movie.
around your age frame. You never watched that growing
That's
up?
not a movie?
No, it's not a movie. It's a cartoon.
It's an animation.
Do you know what that is?
No.
Space Ghost? He looks like one of the villains from Space Ghost, Brack.
He sounds like
He
him too.
sounds like him and he talks like him. It's so interesting. It's almost like
Amazing.
he's doing like an impression of him.
Amazing.
Oh, on White History
Yeah,
Month?
the actual thing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, isn't every month White History Month?
Bomb drop.
Like, because, like, everything you learn in school is from the perspective of white people, right? That's from the system. So then everything would be White History Month. So then why do you need to classify one month as being White History Month? Wouldn't everything just be White History Month?
Well, I think it's in opposition to. I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to give like light to the fact that black people feel so insecure in themselves that they had to create a Black History Month to feel validated in the system. So it's almost like that's something that doesn't really make sense, because if you're so-called a black person and you live like in your culture, you live, you know, with your ancestors, then you live that way every day. So you don't need a month to validate yourself or to validate your existence. So I think that's what he's really poking at. But hey, I don't know. I'm not in his head. I don't know. I might be wrong.
All right, so moving forward, on the topic of
Hang on a minute. Did we not, like, you know, how far back does white history go?
Forever.
Does it?
Oh.
Well, how long has white people been white? That's the
Oh.
question.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Wait, hold on. No,
Bomb job.
on that.
oh, we gotta go to the next.
Actually having
We're getting
an
yelled
event
at by
coming
our
up in
producers.
weeks.
Silently.
We're actually
We'll get
having.
back to
Yeah,
it.
but
Okay,
we'll get
this
back-
is the
yeah,
second
yeah,
time.
we'll bring
We're
it-
We
gonna
only
get
have
back to
90
it.
seconds. We'll get back to it.
Is it just
It's called rapid fire. It's called rapid fire for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't get
He's trying to colonize a podcast. Call it the UN.
So next time, let's just try and start on the topic and stay on the topic.
Okay, sorry.
So you're going to turn off my mic?
Yeah,
I mean, what's
exactly.
going to happen, right?
Well, I think he's mic number 1, right? Let's turn it off.
Well, on that same topic, well, first of all, we actually have an event coming up about that, the color of colonization.
Oh, yes,
Weeks
we
through
do.
heritage. So
Yes.
we'll go more into even what white is, what black is. all
Uh-huh.
that as well.
We'll be going into the history of white and black and where the origin of those concepts come from. And that's going to be in Brooklyn at what time again? I'm giving
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. It's going to be at 1 o'clock. It's going to be in Brooklyn at the Weeksville Heritage Center. I will be there. So if you are looking for me, that's where I'll be. Come on down. Let's talk.
All right, so next topic. The Tulsa Massacre. If you don't know what the Tulsa Massacre was, there was a black-owned sovereign community in the 1930s that was unfortunately attacked, burned down, bombed. Over the course of 24 hours, 35 city blocks in Greenwood was destroyed, amounting to over 300 deaths. Well, now, the survivors who are now over 100 years old were trying to get reparations for this massacre. And
Wow,
the
that's
judge dismissed the case for reparations. So now there's an outcry at the moment for those elders who survived that massacre.
Jahzra, what do you think about reparations? Because I don't even want to. We're just going to start off on a ridiculous tangent. So what do you think? Talking to the mic.
I'm not close enough.
No.
Is it falling?
No, it's not falling.
I mean, you know, after having kind of been involved in Kemetic culture for a while now, it to me it seems like the reparations that a person can claim will have to be something that you're doing to reclaim yourself, to reclaim what belongs to you or what belongs to your ancestors. If there's blood that was shed, stand up for what those people, the principles that those people were standing up for, and live by that. Getting money isn't going to improve our lives. I mean, we see a lot of people that have finances, that have material wealth, but they're still hollow inside or pleading for something. So,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%, but I mean, maybe from the perspective of those people, they saw it as like, you know, it was a money thing, because even like I keep saying the name wrong, Tulsa. The problem was that they were actually groups of black people who found oil. So they were actually competing with the system. So they were having their own kind of like system in the system. So the system didn't want that. They didn't want no competition. So they could have entered the world stage and kind of like compete with Saudi Arabia. So they were like, no. So for them, it's all about finances. They don't really see it as anything to gain, because again, after a certain point, when people have been colonized, people have been going through slavery, they've already lost themselves. They've already lost their culture. So to them, these people don't even necessarily know what that culture is that we're trying to reclaim. So for them, it is all about the money. There's nothing really left.
Go ahead. Come on, don't cut off our guests. Go ahead.
I mean, the only thing I would say to that is the ones that hold the key to the wealth are divine. And so if you're not walking in a way that's in alignment with the principles of those who govern nature, those, that are divine, or, your ancestors themselves, then in many cases things will be closed upon you anyway. So, we see that now. That's the state that we're in. So even if people are trying to climb the ladder and get somewhere socially or economically, it's challenging because the underlying foundation that we need to be standing on is missing.
Damn. Dropping a bomb. I know we gotta move on. Go ahead.
It's a lot of bombs to choose.
Yeah, but you're saying some. You're saying some. It's not like the bombs you drop when you eat curry. But go ahead. Or Indian food.
I mean, but it really just shows the power of fear tactics and how, since that time, it's been so difficult for us to ever replicate that kind of community in this
It
nation.
doesn't give you that.
Okay.
So, a few comments and a few thoughts in the chat.
Yeah, that's fine. But go ahead.
Someone
think you need
says
it.
I should have put a white only sign in the back. Not too sure what they mean by that, but
I think that's a joke.
I think
I
it's a
hope
joke.
that's a joke.
It's laughing emoji.
Yeah.
And then someone says, "What happened to Pharaoh?"
Yeah.
I'm assuming Ramses II is what they're referring to.
So, like, are we done with rapid fire?
No, we're not done yet. I just wanted to let you know what's going on.
Oh,
in real
okay.
time.
No, nothing. I was
So,
calling somebody to
Next
come.
topic.
okay.
On a lighter note.
Yeah.
Man fails to rob nail salon after patrons completely ignore him. So this guy walks into a nail salon. He's like, "Hey, he has like a gun in the bag."
He had a gun.
Well, maybe.
Allegedly.
It wasn't shown, but he had
Yeah.
looking like he had a gun.
Yeah.
Give me your money, everyone. Give me your money right away. Everyone's just sitting looking at him. Like, no one's moving, no one's talking, no one's running. One lady stands up and just walks out the door as he's robbing the nail salon. And long story short, he gets nothing from the situation.
So, I don't go to the nail salon because I'm not a woman, right? But the Chinese women that work at those nail salons are rugged. Like, if like the Chinese ladies, I know you know the Chinese ladies that go to the nail salon, like, you can just see that, like, they're not to be messed with. Like, so I'm not surprised that the Chinese ladies at the nail salon, or Vietnamese or whatever, wherever they're from, that they just weren't even fazed by this guy coming in and robbing the nail salon.
Well,
Well,
also
attempting.
the patrons themselves. People take getting their nails done very seriously.
So you're saying women will not stop getting their nails done,
No.
even at the point of guns?
Hair and nails,
gunpoint?
absolutely not. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Priceless.
There's a guy I know from Detroit, right? And he told me one time he was at the liquor store, and he was there, and this guy walked in to rob the liquor store. And then he was like, and this was during I think it was like 2010, something like that. And I think the recession, there was the economy was in a recession. And he said that the guy walked in and he was like, "I'm sorry, y'all," because he was apologizing for robbing the liquor store while everybody was in there. And then somebody screamed out, "Go get a job." So I think people are impervious to getting robbed at this point. Because that was
No.
2010. So if it's
Nah.
2023,
I don't think that's what it is. It's just the fact that you tried to rob a nail salon. Like, who does that? Like,
Like,
a
why?
liquor store, I understand.
Why?
Wait, where did this
like-
happen? What state? Was this in America?
It has
It's gotta
to
be
be
It's probably Florida, right?
Has to be
gotta be
Florida.
Florida,
It's
yeah.
only in Florida you see some stuff like that. It's something in the water over there. But yeah, it's
But-
like, why would you try to rob a nail salon, bro? Like, of all places, you really?
Because there's a lot of money in nail salons.
Maybe it was for
Women
TikTok.
are always
Oh,
getting
we
their
know.
nails
It's
done.
probably for
Come on,
TikTok.
that's
If
just
I
like,
was gonna go rob a place, I'd go rob a nail salon.
nah, bro.
Okay,
no,
y'all,
no,
so-
that's
Bro,
not
where are you gonna
intimidating
go
at
rob?
all. What I'm gonna rob?
Yeah, where are you
If I'm
gonna
gonna
go
rob
rob?
something, I'm robbing the bank.
You're gonna go to jail.
I'm up.
They're
but
gonna
it's,
chase
It's
you.
worth. At least it's
No
worth
one's
it.
gonna chase you if
At
you go
least it's
rob a
worth
nail
it.
salon.
It's worth it.
Okay,
Alright,
next
go
topic,
ahead,
guys.
go
Okay,
ahead.
guys.
Your head's in the sky, man.
So, speaking of modern madness, a new show, Black Mirror, has come out, which really, well, not a new show, a new season.
Yeah,
of
a
Black
new
Mirror has
season,
come
right?
out, where they're showing different dystopian realities that can emerge from new technologies, right? And how technology is currently going. Well, with that, Meta and Mark Zuckerberg released a new app called Threads, which is a Twitter rival.
Mm-hmm.
And on the first day of launching, it's received 30 million, people who have downloaded the app. So it's really a battle of censorship and friendliness versus freedom and uncensorship.
So, the first episode of that new season of Black Mirror is about the fact that they can clone your likeness and they can use it in a way where if you like sign up for those terms and conditions, like even Netflix can use your image and like whatever they can capture, and they can recreate whatever content they want. And for those of you that don't follow the entertainment industry, there's a strike happening right now between the writers union and the studios. And now the actor union has also gone on strike. And they've gone on strike because what the main point of contention is what that first episode of Black Mirror is about, which is you can show up to work one day and whatever they capture on camera, they can then use that and recreate whatever they want digitally forever. So basically you show up to work and you do 1 day of work and they can use that for the rest of eternity in perpetuity.
Let me understand that. That's like selling your identity.
That's selling your
your visual identity,
Exactly.
your material identity.
your voice. Like they could basically do like what they did with Tupac at Coachella, and they can do that whenever they want.
The hologram thing.
The hologram thing, but they could do that like they could take a picture of you, Biksaa, or a video. Like if they owned Gate of Gates, right? They could take you on Gate of Gates, and they could use that to digitally recreate Biksaa whenever they want.
Would I need to sign up for that?
No.
So it's almost like you really can't trust anything on the internet no more, because we see a lot of videos now and they could literally make anything and anybody sound like anything and anyone.
So
I've even seen like videos of like Trump, for example.
Deepfakes.
Like
deepfakes,
he's
yeah.
saying these things, but it's not really him saying it. But like you cannot tell the difference between him and the program saying it, because it looks so real now. I don't know about you guys, but like that's a scary thing to be in. Like this is scary times.
Yeah, I mean, what were you gonna say, Biksaa?
makes me think of selling your soul to the devil.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
Mhm.
but you're not even selling it.
Well,
You
you're
don't
selling
even
your
have the right to it.
physical, like your physical manifestation forever.
Yeah.
Like you're selling your body, your voice, like forever. Like, and they're doing that. And that's why the actors and the writers are going on strike. Because they're trying to use AI instead of actual people to write things. And they're trying to use the digital recreation of likeness instead of actual people. So
You're not going to do that on this show, though, are you?
No.
Okay. No.
No,
just-
absolutely not.
we're
know.
not. We're not sponsored by Netflix.
Okay.
We use our own genies here.
We're only sponsored by the government.
All right, so before we get to the last topic, I wanted to just go to the chat real quick. We have a couple of questions. So going back to the Pharaoh article, someone asked, what happened to the Pharaoh's lineage?
Damn.
That's a great question,
Yeah,
actually.
but let's let one of our guests tackle that question. Does anyone? Because I know you guys know more than enough about the Pharaoh. So do you guys want to tackle that for it? I think his name is that Chem Warrior. He's going
Correct.
crazy in the chat. I see him asking so many questions, which is good.
Respect.
Yeah,
Is that
respect.
the guy that was on the last couple weeks?
I don't know. He shows up every week, which is good. Thank you, Chem Warrior, for tuning in. We hope you continue to tune in
Big up
and
yourself.
continue to ask questions.
Big up yourself.
So, does anyone want to tackle? Because he also asked what happened to the Pharaoh. And then what happened to the Pharaoh's lineage? So Biksaa or Jahzra, both of you guys look like deer in headlights. So you tell me which one of you want to tackle it. If so.
You're giving it over to me, are you? Okay. I mean, it's a good question. I don't really know how to answer that. But I guess I would really start by saying or thinking about actually what the Pharaoh was about first. Because, we could say what happened to Donald Trump or what happened to, Obama or, I don't know, Boris Johnson. So what? But what was the thing about the Pharaoh ship that really was important? Because it was something that came before the white, politicians came, the white people came, if you like, and that may sound a bit strange coming from a white guy, but once you start to look deeper into what that civilization was all about, you might understand a few things about why it held humanity for many thousands of years. Many, not just the last and back to the white history,
Got to take it back to the English colonization.
Well, English, American, German, Spanish, they were all derivations of something.
Yep.
Like the Dutch, Portuguese, so when you look around what's really happened over a short period of time, it's like 2,000 years. It's not long. Our lineages go back far, far, far.
Well, that's how long they've been counting,
before that.
Yeah.
So what were we as people, right? What were we experiencing, and way before that? And that's what I think the conversation should go to, And so maybe the Pharaoh ship had something that people need to think about, and where are they going to find that information from? Where are they going to find that knowledge from?
Well, it's very difficult to find it, right?
Well, not according to Google, because you can Google anything nowadays, right?
Yeah, well, Google is just filled with misinformation. But do you have something to add?
I would just add that. What was the question again? What happened to the Pharaoh's lineage?
What happened to the Pharaoh and what happened to the Pharaoh's lineage?
Because when you talk about the Pharaoh's lineage, it's nothing happened. It's still there. The lineage itself, that's a line of people. It's people that still exist. Because that's people who were divinely appointed to function as royalty, right? Like when you look back into the culture of Merida or the culture of Africa, the people who are chosen as royalty are appointed as such because that's what their blood dictates. So those people didn't go anywhere. Whether they're actually still publicly known, that's a different issue.
So can I help the people that are listening out and then ask you something? So like when you say blood, what do you mean? Like it's something that's in the blood. What do you mean by that?
So if a family, right, like we can say a bloodline or a family of people coming through the fathers of that family, generation upon generation, continued with the same vow to serve in a certain way, to serve humanity in a certain way. So in this case, we're talking about serving as royalty, right? So that's a family of people, generation upon generation, that goes all the way back to whenever their people vowed that this is what they were going to do. This is how they were going to stand in humanity and serve humanity. So all of us come from a lineage or a line, and we have something that our people committed to do. Whether we know it or not is a different story. And maybe we have tendencies to lean towards doing something. If my lineage was healers, and maybe now I look in my line and I see there's many doctors in my family, maybe that was just the way that in modernity they're able to serve, that vow. But I don't think the lineage of the pharaohs have gone anywhere.
So like when someone says like like if someone was walking around here and they're like, hey, like I was the Pharaoh in my past life, right?
Or the reincarnation of the Pharaoh.
Or the reincarnation of the Pharaoh, right? Then how does that fit in with like how someone would be doing things today? Like what would that look like, right? Because if we all come from this, because from what I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but to somebody that may not understand what you're saying, it's like we all at some point or another, our ancestors said like, hey, this is how we want all of us as humanity to move forward. So we're all gonna commit to doing this. So then what would like being the royalty look like? Why would that be important? Why would that look like something that people would be like, hey, that's an important part to play
In society?
in society?
I'm not sure I'm following your question, but I mean, every society needs some kind of structure, and then within that structure, there has to be a leadership, right? And so not everybody is fit to be a leader of society or a leader for, when you talk about the Pharaoh, all of humanity. Not everybody's fit to be a president. So, you know, even when you talk about democracy and people voting.
So the Pharaoh was, sorry to interrupt you. So the Pharaoh was like the president, but for humanity?
Humanity at large.
So like the Pharaoh was like Obama, but for the whole planet?
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
that a scary scenario?
I mean, I'm just
Like if there was one
Yeah.
person in today's modern sort of hierarchy or governance that was actually then ruling everything, would that be a good thing or a scary thing?
I mean,
Today. I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about the pharaohship.
I'm playing
Well,
dumb.
I'm talking about today.
Well, in today's perspective, a lot of people would call that a dictator, because how can one person be in charge of every single thing and everyone, right? So even that whole concept of dictator, like, what would you guys say is like the view on that? Like in terms of the Pharaoh, is the Pharaoh a dictator, or how did traditional African society view that perspective of one person being in charge of everything?
Because the only real things we can find out about the Pharaoh from the perspective of the system and the religions is the Pharaoh is the one that enslaved Moses and his people, right? He's the guy that, if you've seen the Prince of Egypt, that Moses shows up and he's like, let my people go. Bangs the staff on the ground. Staff turns into the snake. And then he parts I'm about to sneeze, but he parts the red, I don't know, whatever sea he parts to drown the Pharaoh and
Yeah,
his
you said it,
forces
Red
and
Sea.
all that stuff. And so what kind of real history? Because I think, can you guys help out people that think like the Pharaoh is, or the Pharaoh's influence is dead and gone? And how can you see that today in Africa? Do you see that kind of structure surviving today?
So again, from a white person perspective, the minority here, who's traveled a little bit in Merita and been fortunate to travel with people who are from there, who have been around for a very, very, very long time, keeping like the knowledge alive and well, in the temples, in the communities. I have to compare a little bit because we just had a new king been coronated in the UK, King Charles, you know, and there was a lot of talk this time round that, you know, it's lost its shine.
Like it's
lost
luster.
its I mean, what's the purpose of having a king or queen or royalty? And I think that's more the point. What is the point of, you know, someone who's leading compared to what was the pharaohships? What was the point? What was the goal? What was the objective?
Mm-hmm.
You got to ask those questions.
So can I ask that question?
Of course you can, but before you do, because I have to, you know, have a little bit of a say here, you know, being in a minority.
Yeah.
We're allowed that.
Let
Not
the
us
white
minorities.
person talk.
Us minorities are allowed that
Guys.
now, okay?
Yeah.
You know,
Of course.
it's not often.
You're
but I
outnumbered
actually
here.
have that now.
Yeah.
Okay, so
You're outnumbered by all of the people you colonized.
so, but one of
You,
the
specifically you.
but one of those things against the modern royalty was like they have great wealth,
Uh-huh.
right? Some of it we see, some of it we don't see. But when we see gold carriages and when we see big palaces and when we see lots of land being owned by that royalty, you know, there's a lot of people who are now not happy with that, who may have been in 1977 when the Queen had her 25th Jubilee, 25 years after she was, you know, coronated. And so, but my question was, now what about the kingships that still remain in the tradition?
Mm-hmm.
And my experience of that by traveling to, you know, to go and visit in Africa, is that they're not only alive and well, but I'll tell you one little story. When we went to one in West Africa on one of our pilgrimages,
Mm-hmm.
and as you go in, there is a kind of, you know, platform, big tree next to it. As you go in, we're all like, you know, where are we going? But we all had to like bend down.
Oh, is this in Benin?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I've been there. Yeah.
Paracru.
Yeah.
We had to bend down, and then there's a whole bunch of like steps to sit down and wait and to, you know, to have an audience
Yeah.
with the kingship, right? And like some people may say, oh, humbling yourself to the king, whatever, yeah? The thing that people didn't understand, that we understood later, was that whenever that king goes out to the people, when he calls an audience with the people to discuss something, to present something, to you know, to express something, he too then has to humble himself by going through that same door before he stands up to address. Now, would we see that with the modern royalty? Maybe not. When we get into the palaces are not lush and plush and full of crystal and gold and all of that. No. So these kingships are very hardworking, but they're very simple too, in the sense that they are there for the responsibility of taking care of the people and the land, the material and the non-material. And that's why, getting back to the Pharaoh ships, it was in the blood, but it was also a whole lot of steps before you could prove that you had the qualities to really stand for those two things.
Huh.
You know?
So like because you're speaking from experience, so like you've been there and you've seen the continuation of this so-called dead civilization called the Kemetic civilization and its continuance. And you're speaking from, like, you've been to this king and seen him yourself.
I'll just say this, you know, there's a guy who I've got a great admiration for, Graham Hancock. Has anyone heard of him?
Yeah, I have. I've followed him briefly before initiation.
Yeah.
That's the guy that I think now is aligned with like Gaia TV or something like that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, sorry to say he's a white guy, you know, just...
Here they go
I'm
again.
just saying.
Those
But
darn
he's
white
done-
people.
he's
Coming
done
to
a
colonize,
lot. He's
yeah.
done a lot of research.
Yeah.
A lot of research. He was an investigative journalist, and he's done that now over 40 years. And he has been hounded by the system.
Yeah.
We're talking about the archaeologists, you name it. They've really hated what he said, because he said history, going back to history, it goes back a lot longer than the academics want to tell us that where it goes back to.
Yeah.
So we might even enter into black history, which is not the last few hundred years, but the last few thousand years, and back to the cradle of civilization, which goes back thousands and thousands of years. Dare I say it? Hundreds of thousands of years, maybe. Oh, but you can't talk
You're
about
gonna piss
that,
off
right?
a lot of people saying that.
But he managed to break through with that lovely company Netflix that you've just been talking about, you know, Peruset. There's both and, right? And meaning the good and the constructive and the destructive parts of it. But he has done a series called Ancient Apocalypse, where he's essentially saying that there is a lost civilization.
Huh.
It's not lost.
Mm.
That's a secret. It's not lost. It's still alive and well.
So then, how is it not lost? Because for a lot of people that are sitting out there, and maybe their perception of reality is curated by what the archaeologists and the historians tell them. How can you consider it not lost? How do you tell somebody out there that it's not lost?
Well, let me say this before I let the elders really bring the hammer.
Unleash.
The thing is this: when we're talking about, to really bring it back to the Pharaoh, right? We're talking about like the kingships. I think there's a misunderstanding that a lot of people have, as Biksaa was really trying to break down, in what the Pharaoh really is. People think the Pharaoh is like a political kind of like position, or people can just be elected towards being a Pharaoh. But there's lineages, there's bloodlines, there's certain rites of passages that people have to go through in order to get there, to even uphold that. Because we're talking about somebody who really was in charge of the entire humanity, not just a specific region in Africa, not just the entire continent of Africa, but the whole planet, right? So that in itself is like huge. That's a very huge thing to even grasp in like the modern mind. But when you think about it, is it really that different than what we have today? Because today you can see America is like the kind of like the foothold, or America's like the poster child of society. Like there's nowhere you can go on the planet where America does not have their hands in. It's almost like America dictates to the entire world what the standard is. And I don't think it was much that different. Of course there's a lot of differences, but minor things that we can look at to see, okay, maybe this is similar, which shows what? That America might be copying from something, because we can have a president, right? But then we have governors, we have what's another other word? Mayors, all these different things. Senators, right? So there's like a structure, and if because I know a lot of people do research, and if you really know, then you would know that the entire American system is like a copy of the traditional systems in Africa. So there's kings.
Wait. Take that.
Bomb drop.
Go ahead.
There's kings, right? And underneath those kings, there's kings of an entire land, an entire region. And underneath those kings, there are smaller kings. And underneath those people, there's even smaller people governing villages. Now, the Pharaoh was the one in charge of all of those kings. This is where we get the idea or the concept of kings of kings. So sorry to my Rastafarian brothers, Selassie is not the king of the kings of kings. The concept of kings comes from even being the Pharaoh, which is the king of all kings. So it's the king that all kings have to, kind of like bow to, which is what the president is in today's modern society. Now, from that perspective, going back to even the question that the person asked, it's like these people didn't necessarily disappear, but there's a new system that's really ruling the world right now. And that new system has to ensure that the old regime or the old guard or the old system is not functioning. It's not fully propped up. So it's not that these people disappeared or the Pharaoh's bloodline is gone. It's just that it's kind of hidden, because this new system has to be the one in charge.
I see you over there just itching to say something. Jahzra.
Yeah, I'm, there's a lot going through my mind right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can. So basically, the
Chicken korma.
Huh?
I mean, we didn't eat
Chicken
so
tikka
much.
masala.
We didn't eat so much today, just yet.
Yeah,
so
man, yeah.
I'm just.
I mean, if somebody walked
a
out here with a
question.
chicken tikka masala, I'd be like, is there garlic naan? Like, I wouldn't even be mad. I'd be like, it's okay that we're live on air. Just, is there garlic naan?
Good, we can laugh about these
do you
things.
have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think we've hit on it. I think now
Just speak into the mic, please.
the you know, the reason that people look to a leader or whatever the modern leadership is obviously heavily weighted by politics, but it just brings it back to the same point. The reason why there's smaller kings or, you know, kings above them or a king of kings is because they're all submitting to something bigger than them, and they're not human. They're not human beings, right? So there's a structure that.
So are you talking about like aliens? Like, what are you talking about? Because someone's gonna take that and be like, "Oh God, Pharaoh was an alien."
Reptilians.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what we've already touched on, right? Like, if someone is divinely appointed to a position, or this is what their people have always done, a person serving as a king is just a servant to humanity. They're not fighting for power or material wealth or anything like that. There's actually an interest in serving the best interest of people or the best interest of humanity, and we don't see that now. I mean, leaders of societies, that's not, we can't trust that that's what they're genuinely looking out for. So the whole, it's like you're saying, the whole structure has shifted. It is submitted to something else. So those who are still in alignment with those principles that were around at the time of the pharaohs have had to, like you said, hide themselves, you know, from invaders, from colonizers. Doesn't mean that they're not still, you know, around or doing maybe on some level what they're supposed to be doing, but maybe they're just not public.
So it's kind of like we're talking about usurpation, really, because, you know, the Queen of England, or the English family, the royal family, they actually claim to be descendants from the bloodline of pharaohship in ancient Egypt. At the same time, which is weird, because they also at the same time claim to be descendants of the Israelites, like the true Hebrews, which is a very interesting thing. So it's almost like we're dealing with people who really just kind of took the position and stole it, as opposed to people who actually are divinely appointed, as you said.
Yeah, and then, as you know, both of you pointed out, going through the rites of passage, because the family line itself will be one stage that gets you to maybe attempt to fulfill the position, but then the quality that you exhibit, which, you know, there's many kind of series of trials that you'll have to go through to see if you're actually fit to serve, you know. And nowadays, you know, like I was gonna say before, you know, if it's a democracy and people are just voting for who they who they like, or whose you know politics are in alignment with theirs, doesn't necessarily mean that you're fit to serve the people. You know.
So for
That's a good question.
Go ahead.
What makes you fit?
So then, for the people, like, because there's a lot of people out there, right, that don't maybe think that that Africa is maybe the cradle of civilization. There's a lot of people out there that think like maybe Africa is just kind of like a, like, because if you just go off of what the system tells you about Africa, you'll just look at it and you'll be like, well, you know, Africa is just like where like malaria is, Ebola, you know, the feed a child for $1 a day, and they'll just take it at that, right? So what would you guys say connects Africa today, in your experience, you Biksaa, you Jahzra, to the Kemetic culture, from what you've seen? Whoever wants to. I know that's
Yeah.
a big question, but
I mean, it is, and there's many aspects, but the knowledge that has been preserved there I mean, one thing that pops out in my mind is just, different ceremonies that have been preserved for thousands of years, which give a strong consideration to not just material aspects of existence, because when you look at science and medicine and different subject matter, astronomy and all of these things, it's really just giving consideration to only what the eye can see. And I think there's a whole aspect of existence as it pertains to us that is missing there. It's more than 50%, of what's playing on how we function and what affects us, our health, our well-being, and all of that. And so, being able to go and see people who have actually preserved that knowledge and are living it and actively, applying it to their lives. I mean, it's a living legacy. That's just one aspect.
So before we go any further, Bobby Tucker, go away, because
is he not welcome either?
No, it's not that Bobby Tucker's not welcome. It's just that Bobby.
He's just trolling, bro.
Yeah, Bobby's just trolling. Like, Bobby, like, just go do a crossword puzzle. Like, go do anything, but like just leave us alone. Like, if you're not here to contribute to the conversation, Bobby, just go do something else, okay?
I thought this was an inclusive place.
Well, obviously,
I know
because you're
as a
here.
minority, I know, but that's why, I'm able to sit on Kenny Bashu's seat,
All right.
not the Pharaoh's
Yeah.
seat, but,
Kenny Bashu is not the Pharaoh. For anybody that's listening and is thinking
doesn't
that Kenny
claim to be
Bashu is the
either,
Pharaoh.
does he?
Yeah, Kenny Bashu is not the Pharaoh. Yeah, I mean, Bobby Tucker, like, I don't know what to say to you at this point. You were here last week and you were just trying to cause a lot of commotion in the chat and, like, just trying to do a lot of, like, you were trying to do too much. But, Bobby, just go mow your lawn. Go do something else, okay? Like, leave us alone.
Real quick, somebody said an interesting comment. They said, if the Pharaoh's lineage is not gone, why not rebuild his kingdom? And I'm going to just say this real quick. Who said that it's not being rebuilt? Like, no one ever said that. Again, when a parent sees a child and is trying to give a child advice on how things should be done or how things should be ran, and the child refuses to listen, we have a saying back in Jamaica, and I found out that, it's really an African saying that we got from our ancestors. If you don't hear, you must feel. And it's very simple. So the society that we live in today, they didn't hear, so now we're all feeling it. But at some point, it will fall. Now, behind the scenes, there's a lot of things at work, there's a lot of things at play that are being built. So don't think because it's been 2,000 years as opposed to hundreds of thousands of years of history that this thing is going to last forever. But that's just my 2-3 cents.
So Bobby Tucker said he's here for Master Naba, right? And if you're here for Master Naba, what I would say is this, is if you're here for him, then know that you can come to our temples and you can hear Master Naba speak.
Ooh.
Because
Expound on that. You open it up.
Yeah, we have certain divination practices that we preserved since the time of the pharaohs, that if you would like to, commune with spirits on the other side, you can do that. So if you would like to be here for Master Naba, we suggest that you come and visit and you can commune with Master Naba, and he can tell you whatever you would like to know. Because if you're here for Master Naba, Bobby Tucker, either come to our temples or get off the YouTube platform and stop faking the funk. Okay? So just bringing back the conversation to our the conversation we were having is, so all of us here have been to Merita, right? And we've been to the Kemetic temples. We've seen the culture alive and well. And we've seen the lies that the academia and the system and archaeology and all these different ologies and all these different, schools of thought that the system tries to employ, trying to tell us to say like, hey, this thing is dead and gone, or we have to study it, or we have to make sense of it because it's not around anymore. We've gone and we've seen it alive. So how would you say that in your day-to-day life, from what you see, how the Kemetic culture is still alive? Because Jahzra, I know I'm gonna cheat a little bit and ask you this question, right? Because I know you live in Merita. I know you're there. How would you say that you see the Kemetic culture on a day-to-day basis is still alive and well, for those that want to say that they're coming from the archaeology or the academia school of thought to say like, hey, this culture is dead and gone?
Well, we have the code of human behavior, divine code of human behavior, right? And I mean, people can memorize that code, but not really know how it looks when you apply it or live by it. But what you will see in societies there, at least in my experience in West Africa, is that people are actually living by that code. And even if they don't know this, if I show them the 77 commandments and we say, these are the 77 commandments, it's already ingrained in the culture, right? So, I mean, clearly that's coming from Pharaonic times, it's coming from the papyri, the Nu, the Sini. So, but they may not know that verbatim, this is what it is, but it's part of the code of how people live in society.
Get closer to the mic for me, please.
Okay. So, these are the kind of things where you just see the way genders relate to each other, the way the youth relate to elders, generationally, food ways. I mean, it's everything. It's everyday life that, you see the principles that maybe you would learn in classroom or read in a book about Kemetic society is just ingrained in the people naturally, because it's how people pass history from mouth to ear, generation after generation. And so you see your elders living a certain way. If that culture has been preserved within a community, then people just naturally live that way. Even the healing practices, I mean, you see that, people just naturally understand what they can utilize and even what the principles are to maintain a balance within their health. And that's, again, something that people preserve generation after generation. So, if there's a recipe that's coming from Kemetic society and that lived within the generations over time, they still have that. People preserved that. So, it's not... it's just the everyday reality. It's there. You don't have to look too hard or far.
But how come people can wake up and be like, well, where's the Pharaoh? How come he's not around?
You mean in modern society?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a disconnect, unfortunately. I mean, even to be able to understand, okay, Kemetic society is something that once was unified the world, right? So I can say like, okay, I'm Indian. People will look at me and say like, why you have Hinduism, you have Buddhism in India? These are old traditions too.
Are you Buddhist?
No. These are old traditions too, but you. So why would you come seeking this out? But even if you go to the temples in India, right? you'll see the clear connections between, what's existing there, though it's very old, how it connects back to Kemetic society. I mean, a lot of the practices and even society-wise, the way things are functioning, among generations, among gender, everything, it's something that you can see extended past Africa itself, even, and that it being the cradle, it traveled, the knowledge traveled and was preserved.
Mm-hmm.
So why people can wake up and do that is because whatever happened with invasions and the disconnect of the culture between, people and their roots, we'll have people asking those questions because history's been rewritten, retold. That generational, that pass from generation to generation has been broken, or it's been stifled.
So the follow-up question I would have for you is like, when you talk about the connection between like the culture you see in India and the culture you see in Merita, and how you see how it hasn't been broken, how would you describe that? Like, what are these type of similarities that you're talking about?
So, I mean, even when you see the way, for example, elders are revered in... Revered.
Yeah,
in,
revered.
Revered.
We revered all you elders.
It's okay. It's okay. It's just
Respected.
English. It's just English.
You have that there, like the guru shisha system where there's like a master.
Guru Shisha?
Yeah, like the master
that?
disciple.
Guru
master
Shisha? Is that a dish? Guru Shisha? I'd like chicken Guru Shisha.
Anyway, that system is still there, right? Where people are seeking out a teacher.
We have another Indian sister off camera, and she's shaking her head at me. She's like,
Yeah, stand up.
"You're a monster."
How much are you the hugger? Over there.
Polytheism. That there's divinities that govern over natural aspects of existence, whether it's a river, a mountain, a rock, whatever the case may be.
So there's like a rock god? Is that what you're saying?
We're not going to get into that right
The
now.
only look, I'm trying to help the people out there that are listening.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to understand if you say like there's a god that's overseeing a rock and a river.
Well, let's just say if there's divine aspects or divinities governing different aspects of nature, right? Like whether it's a body of water, a mountain, whatever the case may be, a tree, forest, there's still that understanding that lives within traditional Indian society, or not even traditional. I mean, even the religions themselves are still playing on that.
Man, so essentially what you're saying is that Africa is the cradle of humanity, because if you see these connections in India and even all the way in England, right? Like all the way in, because how can you talk about, can you expand on a little bit about like the England's history prior to the colonization aspect? So like the colonial aspect in terms of that we know it, because even in America, right, we only hear about England when I think like they started with, there's like a certain king that they started with. I don't really remember the exact king, but they started with a very specific king. And what they do is they then start talking about how like he was just looking to expand his territory. But they don't talk about like, the people maybe that predated that king, or maybe where the concept of a king came from, right? So can you give a little bit of a historical context in terms of like, because I know this is something that means a lot to you, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I now am part of a people and a culture where I'm the minority skin color.
Yes, we
Um,
outnumber the white people finally.
Well, and that's going to happen soon anyway,
Right?
right? But it's not about skin
Is it?
color.
I mean, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
But it's not about that. When you look into, in a way, the colonization, the people of the lands of Northern Europe, they were never walking the way they walk now, wearing the clothes that they wear, focusing on the things that are focused upon now. The material nature, accumulation, consumerism, all of that. For thousands of years, they were also, dare I say it, pagans, right?
Dun dun dun. What do you mean by that?
Well,
Pagan.
that's a good question. I'd like to ask everybody that question because there's, we even laughed about it recently, It's like, what does pagan mean?
You know, pagan in Jamaica is an insult. Like if somebody calls you a pagan, it's an insult.
Really?
Yeah, it's a thing.
So, like,
Well-
if I go to Jamaica and I want to insult somebody, I'll call them a pagan?
Yeah, you call them a pagan.
Well, I want to make an announcement actually that I've not said to anybody. I'm coming out tonight. This is my coming out. Okay.
Coming out of what, though?
No,
Please
but
don't say the closet.
listen. Can you just give me a moment while I come out?
Yes, come out. Come out of the darkness.
I don't think anybody knows this. Actually,
Yes.
not even my mom,
Yes.
or family.
Sorry, Mom.
So,
And family.
yeah. So I'm a pagan.
You're a pagan?
I'm a pagan.
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's an evil world we live in.
Oh, no, that's the wrong sound. Oh, wait, hold on.
Sensation.
Sensation. He's a pagan. Oh, giddy.
Yeah, so insult me. Those fine folk, wherever you said they were from, right?
Jamaica.
But that's been an insult
Pagans
for
in Jamaica.
that's been an insult for hundreds of years.
Uh-huh.
Why? Pagan people probably didn't even call themselves that, but a
Right.
name was given or came from somewhere that we don't even think about what it means. We just think there's a negative connotation to it. If you go to France, we had a discussion earlier on. Pay is land, simply. So it just means people from the land. What does that mean? People who live with the land, for the land, work with the land. Yeah? And so, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that.
It's not Christian. That's
well,
what's wrong with it.
that's the thing. So someone came along and said that is heretic. That goes against the understanding that there's just one God or one way, and therefore you guys are evil. You don't. Now, we were colonized, as in
Meaning like the British?
meaning those that lived on the land where the Romans came. But it just so happened 2,000 years ago rather than 500 years ago in other lands. So we were the first people to be colonized.
So the Romans are the real enemies.
Well, we'll call them whatever.
Rise up against everybody that lives in Rome.
But let's just say those that said that paganism or living, in the land, on the land, with the land, for the land, actually is something wrong. And what does that actually mean? It actually goes back to indigenous people, of which we are all indigenous people. And as Master Naba says, if you want to preserve yourself, you have to really preserve all. And that's all the indigenous people and pagans, witches, wizards, those really,
Like Harry Potter?
like Harry Potter, he should not be named. So but some of those practices.
Do you know Voldemort? Is Voldemort here? Everybody run!
We can't mention that.
Yeah,
name.
right. Yeah, we can't
Okay.
say that right now.
Okay, or
Just go-
someone,
just
or
go
someone
get-
else's name right now.
Yeah,
you know,
just go get your wizard.
'cause
Go
that's
get your
scary.
wands.
Because that person actually practices something that is related to nature and related to some of the higher powers. See, the thing is, when we go back to the Pharaoh, all the Pharaoh was doing was connecting in and bowing down to those bigger forces that, if we all sit back and think about it, have maintained the biggest thing that's sustainable and resilient in existence, and that's nature. They're the forces that are sitting behind that. We're just trying to modify them. GMO, like, seeds that now are being turned into something else than nature gave us. And, that's the most shocking thing. That's where the conversation should be, rather than which people did what. Now look at what those people are doing. Of course, yeah, the behaviors are there, but we're all doing them. We're all. I mean, look at all this stuff that we're sitting, with all this metal and stuff that's been taken out of the earth. The cars that we came in, the bike that I came on from the UK, the metal bird that's in the air that I came on, all of that, So we've all got a hand to play in it now. But looking back, so before that colonization that was made of those people of that land, those indigenous people of the land, because nobody is really living an indigenous life now in Northern Europe. You can't find the original people and with the original ways anymore. That's why I had to go around the world. Firstly, east, to go and eat some curry, and get some understanding of consciousness, meditation, yoga, all of that, to see there's something bigger. But then to the Amazon and various different places. But then back to the Celtic, back to those
Shout out
the
to the
Druids,
hills of Tara.
the hills of Tara, all of that, and travel to those places to find out. But the thing is, you can't find the origin,
Stonehenge.
the lost civilization, that holds the knowledge.
How come? How come you can't find it?
Because it was wiped out. It wasn't able to preserve itself. Its language, we didn't speak English in the land of England way back. That's what came from the Latin. Derivation, piecing together of different aspects of it. We don't even know what half the words are these days. Pagan, we don't know what that means. We just use it with a connotation of, oh, this is bad. I don't want to be that. But I've come out tonight, okay, and just said, I am one of those who, wants to be in alignment with nature and all of the aspects of it, which is not easy. It's like we're in this lovely place at the moment, in nature, upstate New York, and things are going to challenge us. The insects, the whatever it is, it's going to challenge us. But getting back in and replanting ourselves back into nature is really important. So, you can look back at the history of the UK and things like that. There's a rich history. But where does it come from too? You look at Stonehenge, everybody's going, including the investigative journalists. You look at the BBC programs, they're just nothing on it. But the investigative journalists, they still don't understand it. You go back into the temples and speak to the elders, it's like, yeah, we practice it, it's just over here, look. But there's like 10 or 15 different versions of it, each with specific technical connections into those powers, not to be lush and, to attract all of the material wealth, but actually to be walking with everything behind them in alignment with nature, in alignment with themselves, so that they can keep, being in harmony with that through existence.
So,
which is probably big. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
You said
Bomb drop.
I'm dropping a bomb.
No, I was gonna say, with a lot of what Biksaa is saying, it's powerful, because in going back to the motherland, or Merita, which is the cradle of civilization, for me, it was very eye-opening. And it was eye-opening because it was the first time when I could say that I can view people living in alignment with nature and in accordance to what nature is dictating without it being really like romanticized. Because here in the West, we can kind of like fall in the trap of like romanticizing things a lot. We kind of like make things ideological. But for the first time, it became like something real. So I can actually see, oh, wow, this is like nature at its height. This is like nature manifesting itself. And like, even like going back to what Tutipsa had mentioned with like speaking to like Master Naba, I was always interested when I first came to the Earth Center with the 77 Commandments poster, because the section in which we were looking at, you know, the human being going through judgment, they have the white robe on, and you hear a lot about Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at. You hear a lot about Ma'at with the feather and the heart being weighed against the feather, and what that means. Like, you see that on the poster, and then you see the human being with being judged, and the feather and the heart being weighed, and then they're sitting in front of the divinity or the god Wisser, which is like the father of humanity. And to me, like, that image was like so potent, it was so powerful. But going back to the motherland and like stepping foot inside of the traditional temples, stepping foot inside of the ancestral vestibules, and then actually kneeling down in front of an ancestor, kneeling down in front of a priest who's embodying that ancestor.
Yeah, but speak from personal experience.
This is my personal experience. This is what I'm saying. Like,
because some people are gonna sit here and they're gonna be like, "Well, that's great."
But that's what I'm saying, though. From my personal experience, like, up until that point, it was all like kind of like speculation. But actually going there and seeing people living in accordance with nature in that way, and actually living in accordance with like spiritual and non-material things, to me that was like amazing. Because because when you kneel down there, nothing can prepare you for how your heart actually feels. Like, you feel yourself being judged, you feel the heaviness of it, you feel the weight, and if your heart is not light enough to match up to that, you're gonna stutter on your words. Like, the ancestors are gonna say things to you that's gonna rock you, it's gonna shake you. Like, things were said to me that I wasn't expecting, and not that I was gonna go up there and be like, "Hey, yeah, man, I got this. I don't got nothing to hide." But then they see things in you that
everyone says that,
right?
And then they go up there, and then the ancestors are like, "Did you know this?" And then you're like,
I didn't even think of that.
What should I say?
Right. But I'm just saying this to say, it's like, it's so important, it's so different when you can actually live in accordance with nature. Things appear different. You think different, you act different, you eat different. And that was the first time I noticed in my life that there are things that I have to actually live in accordance with, and there's things that are not just physical, things that I can't necessarily see without proper training, of course, things that are there that are dictating certain things in my life. And that's even what it is with the Pharaoh. Like, we need to understand that it's more than just the material. There's things in the non-material that are there, things that we need to actually live in accordance with, things that we need to live in harmony with. And for me personally, that was the first time that it hit. It really hit. Before that time, it was just all mental speculation.
So we have a few comments on in the chat, right? And first, let's address Chem Warrior. Chem Warrior said, "Why do your organization think about religions? African?" I read that verbatim. I think you're trying to ask, what does your organization think about religions? I think that's what you're asking, Chem Warrior. And to make it short and sweet for you, is that religions are a derivative and a really bad Chinese knockoff of Kemetic spirituality. So we look at religions as like that little brother that is like trying to smoke cigarettes or like trying to drink alcohol or like trying to talk about how you have like 9 girlfriends and then like you're really like a virgin. Like that's the way we look at that's the way we look at religions. So the way we look at it is we don't necessarily take religion serious, because religions are just a tool of colonization in order to enter into, you know, traditional areas and infringe upon traditional aspects of African spirituality and try and present something that looks like spirituality to you so that you will adopt it to some degree. So, you know, like for those of us that have been initiated, for those of us that have traveled in Africa, you know, African like religions, like
I mean, we really just see it as like it's against spirituality. And I know a lot of people think like religion itself is like a spiritual system, but it's really not. Because if that was the case, why is it that every time that people came to a land and they wanted to colonize it or conquer a people, they introduced religion when there was already traditional or indigenous spirituality? That in itself shows that it's an anti-spiritual kind of movement. It's something against spirituality. So we don't really look at religion as like a thing that we should prop up. So when people say African religions, understand that that's coming from a misunderstanding of what spirituality is and what, you know, religion is in its entirety.
So do you guys have anything to add before I move to the next question?
I mean, you know, with the religions, you'll have to look at the history. If a religion is worshiping a higher power, what's the history of that higher power? And if it's something that's created by another man or a human being, I mean, we really have to question
Like Jesus?
the validity of that. I mean, if Jesus is somebody's ancestor, I'm not interested in worshiping somebody's ancestor. I'll take care of mine.
Hold on, we're gonna drop a few bombs.
Bomb drop.
Gosh.
I hope y'all caught that one.
I hope you guys got that one, because Jahzra just helped you guys out with that one. Gosh. Drop another bomb. Go ahead, Jahzra.
But then you also have religions that are, you know, like if you take Buddhism, for example, and, you know, Siddhartha Gautama, that's a person. That's a person who had a journey, that had a journey and then became enlightened. We all have come to life with that opportunity to become enlightened beings. He himself didn't want to be worshipped. It's the principles that he lived by that could help anybody seek and reach enlightenment.
And
that
this is
he
who
was
again?
Buddha.
Buddha? Because you said Siddhartha.
Yeah, so that's his name,
yeah,
right?
okay.
It's a person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just another example. If a religion is just something that's worshiping a human being,
Okay,
then, you know, we have to question that too, because we keep talking about nature. And, you know, I loved learning through the Medu language, because in Kemetic, you know, groups that follow Kemetic culture, the word neter is thrown around a lot. I think sometimes it's called nature and, you know, different things. I'm sure we've all heard that. But learning that nature comes from the word neter. I mean, we like to romanticize this idea of being in alignment with nature and maybe think that that's like, you know, being close to the trees, walking around barefoot and all these kind of things. But
walking around naked, walking into the river naked. He's like, I haven't showered in 15 days.
Or eating grass, or whatever the case may be.
I'm a breatharian.
But we have to the root of it all of us, our lineages come from a territory, and those territories, those lands had bodies of water, they had mountains, they had things that, you know, the people were standing on. That's what fed the people. That's what gave them that was the breath of their life and their very being. And so if you can't acknowledge that, and that's the neter, that's the nature. It's simple. There's nothing complicated about it. You know, I mean, when you talk about animism and you talk about the pagans, they were just doing that simple thing, right? And so
Jahzra's waking up, ladies and gentlemen.
It's just returning to that. So if I'm going to claim me as an Indian, I'm a Kem, it's because I'm understanding that my ancestors came from somewhere and there's something that I have to bow down to. So if a Kemetic society and I have a teacher and a master that taught me to return back to that, well, let me give my allegiance to that master, and that's Kemet, you know, because they didn't lose that.
So, this whole time I've been sitting here looking at Jahzra like, Jahzra, when are you gonna
Activate.
when are you gonna come online? And I think Jahzra just came online for everybody. And so we have another comment, right? We have another comment, and Suave Armstrong is asking, what I am wondering is how to practice Kemeticism without God and his son Jesus, right? And
Such an interesting question.
Suave Armstrong, you've caught us on the wrong day. And the reason why I say that is because if you're going to talk about Kemeticism, right, let's talk about anything that ends in an ism. Anything that ends in an ism would technically be considered an ideology. So anything that's considered an ideology is something that exists solely in the mind and is something that you attempt to impose upon the natural reality. So like if you're practicing veganism or vegetarianism or, you know, you name it, anything that ends in an ism, when you're faced with the real reality of survival, that ism will go out the window because you're faced with the real reality. So if there's some pork in front of you and you haven't eaten for 14 days and you're about to die of hunger, you're gonna eat that pork. You're gonna be like, that veganism is going out the window. You're gonna be like, that vegetarianism is going out the window. So it's an ideology. It's something that exists only within the mind. So if you want to talk about Kemetism, there's no such thing as Kemetism aside from things that are coming from the colonizer and their perspective of trying to like novelize or trying to put a novelization upon the Kemetic culture. Right? And I was telling myself, I'm not going to go off today, but I'm going to go off today for you, Suave Armstrong. Because the thing is this, right? Is the Kemetic ways, and this goes out to anybody, the Kemetic ways are still alive and preserved in indigenous culture within Africa. We like to call Africa Merita, and we like to call Africa Merita because what we like to say is Merita is the indigenous name for Africa, whereas that Africa is coming from people that attempted to come and learn from the culture, and in their attempts to learn from the culture, they tried to say, hey, this is what we're going to call it because we're going to insult the people that brought us out of the darkness. It's like somebody that puts clothes on your back or shows you how to eat or shows you how to wash your armpits or wash your butt when you haven't been washing your butt, and then you want to insult that person. That's why we don't really talk about Africa. We talk about Merita. So everybody that's sitting here can talk about Merita because we're talking from experience. We've seen the culture alive and well, right? So Suave Armstrong, I just want to give you a little advice, right? Don't live your life according to an ideology, okay? Because there's no such thing as an Egyptian. There's no such thing as Kemeticism because you're either a Kem which means you're living according to the principles of Hejeptah, and that's the only thing we have in our archives. We don't have this thing called Egypt. That's like a really bad interpretation of Hejeptah. And for those of you that don't know what I'm saying, you shouldn't know what I'm saying, because the only way you've been illuminated, or the only way you've been educated, is coming from people that don't understand the real culture. So I hope what Biksaa has been saying, what Jahzra has been saying, what Kaji's Raymond has been saying on this show tonight pierces something in your spirit. And pierces something in your spirit where your ancestors can wake you up to the false ideologies that you're living by, so that you can one day, hopefully, and we're going to pray for that, for you to step out of the darkness, like those that came to learn from the Kemetic culture, because it's not time for that anymore. So it's still alive. Okay? So if you want to live according to Kemeticism, then yes, go get your ankh, go get your Pharaoh hat, go get your tradition, go get your mud cloth, and then you can twirl around places, and then you can call yourself Kemetic. But just don't come around here with that. And with that, I will turn off my mic.
You know, he had a follow-up question. I thought his follow-up question was a little interesting. He said Jesus and his son is Lord and Savior. I just wanted to know, it is everything, not even Lord and Savior, it is everything. I just wanted to know how that fits into the culture. Well, Tutipsa just said a lot, right? Now, let me just add on. It doesn't fit into the culture. Because when you're talking about Jesus and his son, like, how old is that? How old is Jesus? When was Jesus born?
Wait, Jesus and his son?
It says Jesus and God
and his son.
Well, he said Jesus and his son.
Because those are two different things.
But he said Jesus and his son. God
Jesus
and his son,
and his son.
whatever.
Who's Jesus'
I'll
son?
make the correction. God and his
Mary
son.
had kids?
But look, it says Jesus.
Did Jesus
and
impregnate
his
Mary?
son.
Who did Jesus impregnate? Because
Listen.
I want to know.
Listen, clearly he just wanted to leave a comment. But
Yeah.
let me clear this thing up. It doesn't fit. Because again, we're talking about a tradition and a culture that's over 100,000 years old. We're talking about a people that's preserved this, that's way older than Jesus. There was not even a letter J in the alphabet, I think. That's what they like to say, right? So for you to make that kind of comment shows exactly what Tutipsa is talking about. You're living in a fantasy world, bro. And for everybody who has that kind of mentality where, oh, God this, Jesus that, come on, stop. Because again, paganism, animism, whatever you want to call it, traditional culture, Kemetic culture, predates all of that. Indigenous predates all of that by thousands and thousands of years. So we're talking about cultures that have had this in their lifestyle for thousands and thousands of years. The land was there before Jesus. The rivers were there before Jesus. The water was there before Jesus. The air was there before Jesus. Everything was there before Jesus and God. So you cannot say, how does it fit into the culture? It doesn't. That's colonization. That's anti-nature. And that's the reality. So everybody got to just get over it.
Do you have anything to add, Jahzra?
I mean, you know, if Christianity or the worshiping of Jesus, if that's something that one has adopted in modern society, and we know that came through colonization or at, you know, gunpoint, why not just check and see what your people did before that? Just give that a chance. If it worked for your ancestors, it might work for you. Because if we look around in the societies where all the churches are standing, a lot of them are suffering. The suffering hasn't finished. It's ongoing. It's getting worse. So it's just a matter of just check what people did behind you. That might serve you a little bit better. I forget his name. But if whoever that is honestly looking for a way, come check us out. You know, because maybe you can be reconnected to something that's actually yours.
Well, I think the problem is that like a lot of people will look at, like, you're sitting right here, right? And where are you from again?
India.
You're from India? Why'd you say it like that?
I'm getting sleepy.
You're getting sleepy. We know it's past Jahzra's bedtime.
You just woke up.
But yeah, like
You just woke up.
yeah, you just
Come on.
like there's no sleep till Brooklyn. Like we're not giving up. And where are you from again?
I'd like to add something.
Yes, please.
Okay. So it's almost like people want to align themselves with the higher powers. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have something behind you that's really big and powerful, and so you can manifest, or you can, live better, or you can be more powerful than those that are attacking you in some way, right? We're sitting under this ma'ata or ma'at, right? It'd be nice. Don't start you off, but it would it would be good to have that power, yeah? But the thing with learning from those that have connected and remained and understood what it is to be a human being, not a god, but what it first of all means to be a human being, is there is something in between a human being and a god. And that is your family first, living, and then your family that actually has transitioned. Now, how do we feed that? Because that is the piece which, when you go to the museums, they try and confuse you, right? Even the academics, you try and read, you try and read the Book of the Dead, right? If you have any knowledge that comes from the indigenous people, you'll very clearly see where it takes you off track. To the fact that it just becomes intellectual, it just becomes, something idealistic or whatever. There's nothing you can do with it. We have our calendar now, which has been around for many, many thousands of years, which every 10 days, there is a particular day called Ancestral Holy Day. That's not intellectual. That's very practical. It's very simple. We give what's called a sepulchral meal, which actually feeds who we are, where we have come from. You talked about the bloodlines. Why not start where we are and try to recover some of the gifts, some of the experiences that those many thousands of ancestors that were walked before and experienced, bring those, get connected to those before going to the next level of Jesus or God or, the higher powers. And so once we start to feed those aspects of ourselves, which there are cultures, the Dogon being one of them, that have held, how do you do that consistently, very simply? And, if you have any level of spiritual understanding, you'll realize that you didn't just come this time round, you've come before. Well, what about the experiences that you came before with? How do you feed that aspect of yourself? What we might call the reincarnation spirit. Start there. Those that your bloodlines, those powers in nature, not the higher ones like Maat or whatever, why not start there that you've already in your lineage had a connection with, and start to feed those? Because when you do, you start to heal, you start to get over the traumas, maybe you start to get over some of those things that you feel inside aren't balanced, aren't harmonious. So, that's where what I really appreciate about the Dogon is that they're not saying we're going to give you some big, God, or we're not going to start calling you the big gods or giving you those bigger powers until you've actually stabilized yourself in who you are, and focus on that first. And so I see a few nods.
Well said.
I mean, it's so hard to say something after what Biksaa just got done saying. And this is the thing, is, everybody that you see here sitting before you is speaking from experience, which means that we didn't pick up a book and read it. We didn't decide that we were going to call ourselves something. we're speaking from actual experience and actual travels. And I know that the knock for a lot of people is, how can you call yourself a Kemetic organization when you accept white people or you accept Indian people? And the thing is that if you truly understood the scope of the Kemetic civilization, then you would know that at some point the Kemetic civilization spanned many different continents in many modern known countries, and that it didn't stop, and it wasn't limited to geographical territories. And we want to sit here in front of you for you guys to understand that the Kemetic civilization is not dead. It's not. And it's not going anywhere. Because whatever Jahzra has done today to activate her ancestors and everything that they've achieved, whatever Biksaa has done today to activate everything his ancestors have achieved, the same with Kajizarim and the same with myself, it's not going to go away. And that's how the Kemetic civilization continues. The Kemetic civilization has to do with legacy. It has to do with the fact that you pass something along that cannot be broken, that cannot be quantified by the physical. And that's what we want everyone to understand, is Biksaa is talking about, visiting the kingships in Benin. Jahzra's talking from experience in terms of living in Merita. I'm not gonna name the city, but Jahzra, can you maybe tell some of the people out there in terms of some of your experiences in terms of living within the culture and how even you being within the culture and seeing it and living within it and breathing it, how it's informed you connecting to your roots as an Indian person and a Kemetic person.
There's a lot. We're raising our children over there, and I really appreciate seeing a culture that has unified principles, because I can teach my children something at home and things that I'm trying to embrace within ancestral culture, but I can know that when I send my children to school, those teachers and the other children can reinforce those same principles, because everybody's under that common umbrella, which is Kemet, right? Even though it has its derivatives, it has its dialects, but at the end of it all, what's at the base of it is the same thing. So the principle of designated spaces, the principle of purity, the principle of how you regard one another, how you manage food, whether how you clean yourself, whether you eat with your left hand or not. These basics, to Kemetic society, social structures, and all of these things, it's reinforced, right? But when I'm here, I can't have that same confidence that if I send my children to school, because it's the land of liberty and freedom, they're going to get a whole hodgepodge of things, and when they come home, I don't know what the basis of their education is, and therefore I have to keep it in my own hands, right? So, it's just it's in the land, it's in the air, it's in everything that the people do, it's in the exchanges that you have in the markets, it's in the way people dress, it's what they're willing to reveal, it's what's forbidden territory. that a person is defined by what they will not do. And in Kemetic society, that's it. Like, there are things that people just will not, borders people will not cross. And to know that you can live in a society and trust that there's an common understanding about those forbidden territories, it's a blessing. I mean, you can trust people, right? So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but in 5 years of being there,
that's a lot more than some people can say.
It's life-changing.
So you can, I think you have a wealth of knowledge that a lot of people can't speak on, because nobody can take away those 5 years from you. So, like, even you speaking from experience in terms of those 5 years, you could be bestowing upon somebody that's even struggling with reclaiming their own culture or finding the courage to do so.
And I mean, the beauty is, because straddling two worlds is not easy, because though I was maybe born in India and raised in the United States, and now living in Merita, I have a lot of modern ways in me, but I'm still trying to reclaim.
Like what? Like you it's hard for you to eat traditional food, or like what, Jahzra? Don't try and hide.
There's attachments that we're raised with here, whether it's material attachments, whether it's, this society is very emotionally driven, so to try to control your emotions and not let them lead you, that takes some time to unlearn, right? And I'm not going to say I've mastered that in any way. But to try to these two worlds, I mean, I love even some of the work that we're doing within, our organization of like bridging that gap, right? Like taking children who've grown up in tradition, giving them an opportunity to have a modern education so that people like me, people like us can be educated back to ancestral tradition so that we can close that gap. Because it's not that you can't live. We're all, like Biksaa already said, we're using all what modern society has provided us, and that's helping us, right? It's helping us to grow what we're doing. But we're missing some of the foundation and the principles. So to marry those two things back at this time and space, I think is really valuable. And that's what we're trying to do by going back, really learning from the people who have preserved and protected those things, giving those people the honor and the respect that they deserve, humbling ourselves to them and trying to get as much as we can from them so that we can restore ourselves and then come back here to the farmland and, see if others want something.
when you say, because I think you're speaking and really dropping a lot of context for people that maybe don't have that context, because there's a lot of people out there that think that they can maybe reclaim the culture for themselves and never travel to Africa and never go to Africa. Because there's a lot of people that walk around and then they think like, okay, like I got the mud cloth, I got the ankh, I got the hat. Like, I'm going to walk around barefoot. I'm going to put the feather in my hair. And then they're like, I've got it. I'm Kemetic now. Or I'm reclaiming my Kemetic culture. But do you think that's possible to do that?
I mean,
why are you laughing, Biksaa?
Go ahead.
I'm just waiting for Jahzra's response. That's all.
I mean, if we're analyzing something, we have to look at, well, what's the goal, right? Like, what's really the purpose behind it? So, if I've landed upon Kemetic knowledge, and I've learned that this knowledge can help me to understand why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing here, then the mud cloth and the feather and the all of this and all of that doesn't, where does that play in that question, right? And then if my search for finding out my purpose and who I am and why I'm here has to take me back to the source, then that's what it has to do, and that's what it's done, and that's what I think for many of us, that's what we've found that we have to do, because just even to come upon it here, and then, okay, go and research and investigate yourself and see where it's coming from. I have a teacher, and that teacher has a teacher. So let me go just check where they're coming from. And I can go there and I can see everything, right? And I can see where they're learning. I can see where they're preserving and what they're practicing. And it's, it's not made up, like you said, over and over again. It's living, so.
If I can just add to that, it actually doesn't take much. When you scratch below the surface of things and do your research, even you can do that in Google or whatever, but if you go and see with your eyes, you can really understand what this culture holds, right? The big thing that you need, though, to carry with you is humility, the openness to really learn from someone else, from a people or a culture that has been around for a very long time, and to understand that it is going to challenge your way of thinking, because we talk about when initiates come or people come to learn, students, they have very full cups. There's a lot of things out there that we can connect with. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that much of which is either false or it doesn't go back far enough. It's coming from academic institutions that have a particular way of looking at things. They don't come from the idea that there is a non-material, that actually is a power and an intelligence, that actually runs the show. we came a lot later in existence. We weren't there at the beginning. Our parents didn't make this. Our grandparents didn't make this. This reality, this nature, but there was something else. And so as long as we can humble ourselves to that fact, I come in as a, if you haven't noticed already, a minority in this group. It's not often I can say that, so I've got to say it once or twice, But
tell them where you're from.
But as a white person, and it's very difficult for some people to learn an African spirituality, hearing it from someone, with my complexion. But little did they understand that before that, I have to humble myself and get rid of a lot of the knowledge that I picked up, or what knowledge that I thought I had, and bow to the feet of those masters, those teachers, that lineage that holds real knowledge, in order to be able to hold at least something. And I'm not here giving my own, as one of our students, was had a difficulty in the beginning, listening to me teach or share or express. But it was only when he realized that I wasn't sharing my own personal, perception or ideology or whatever, but this comes tried and tested through thousands of years, and I'm just passing it on now. But you have to humble yourself. So I say to all white people out there, for example, you may have a problem going into African spirituality, but it's just the source, it's just the origin, it's just the one that's been around the longest. And when you can do that, and then you're going to be able to, at least see for yourself. And then I say to the black population that have difficulty with whites coming in, the thing that they need to understand is I'm not promoting colonization or anything to do with it. In fact, it's the opposite. I'm actually looking at how to promote and preserve the African culture, way of life, civilization, and spirituality as best I possibly can from, where I've grown up. What's wrong with that?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think the trap that a lot of people from the black community fall into is the trap of colonialism, because we feel as if we have the right to claim certain things as our own, But again, if you're even going to claim like culture or claim an understanding of culture, then you need to first understand what that culture stands on or the principles that culture lives by. And the principles that this culture, specifically Kemetic culture or really indigenous culture, lives by is nature and what's natural. And human beings themselves are nature. They're natural. So this culture was a global culture, was a world culture. So to say that you're Kemetic, you can't say that if you're trying to hoard it within a specific group of people based on just their skin complexion or skin color. That's actually the same trap that the so-called white people, the colonizers, set in order to divide specific groups of people against each other. So in a sense, you're still playing the mental slave game when you think in those kinds of ways. So I just want to say to my, brothers and sisters out there with this skin complexion, really, really, really think deep about it. Really think hard about what Biksaa is saying, what I'm saying, what Jahzra said, what Tutips is saying. Like, it's deeper than just the skin. It's about the blood, because when you really go back deep enough, we all have the same origin. We're all coming from the same place. So don't let colonialism entrap you in these mindsets and these ideologies. It's time for us to really move beyond this now, because what we're saying, what we're really talking about is rebuilding that same Kemetic culture, that same Kemetic, society. And you can't do that without rebuilding the world. So to do that, we have to rebuild each other. Every individual, regardless of location, demographic, race, whatever, sexuality, has to rebuild themselves. And it starts by rebuilding their bloodlines, their ancestors, their divinities, their deities, whatever it is. But you have to rebuild yourselves as individuals, and then the whole world can be rebuilt. And then that's, to go back even to the first question, that's how we rebuild the Pharaonic society.
So, man, Kaja's Reuben.
He finally spoke. He's been very quiet tonight.
I'm just listening.
Like,
no, he
very
hasn't.
quiet.
No, he hasn't. But Biksaa, I have a follow-up question. Even though Kaja's Reuben just kind of like proverbially dropped the mic, and like that would be a phenomenal place to end.
Yes.
I just have I know Jahzra's like, get me out of here. She's like, anywhere but on camera, especially live. Is why is it that people have an aversion to learn Kemetic culture from somebody that they see with your complexion? What is that? And why would that be a misunderstanding of Kemetic culture to begin with, if they have that sort of aversion?
You'll have to ask them then. Some people do, and some people don't. How so? But the ones that don't have that aversion, or initially maybe, but they get over it, and they actually see, this is what I want to reclaim, those are the ones that grow. Those are the ones that really lose so much of the angst, the anger, towards what's out there, and they then start to grow. They start to clean their hearts, start to release the anger, they start to do the work on themselves. And those are, that's beautiful to see, and so those are the ones that are truly, reclaiming themselves, reconquering their minds, because it's only the mind that actually starts to tell us, oh, we shouldn't do this, or that person, whatever. Once we can get over that voice, conquer what has been put into us about, differences in race, differences in, and color, get back to the fact, well, actually, it's our own journey that we're going to focus on. Stop feeding that anger, because it's only hurting yourself. Whatever that anger is. Race is just one of them, So once they do that, it's just amazing to see. The ones that don't, they come in and, they will have an aversion to it. They'll have like a big reaction, and that can be the biggest turning point in their life if they just face it and realize that they can reclaim so much of their ancestry by doing it, rather than flipping themselves back to the books, flicking themselves back to what the academics have said, which has got nothing to do with them. You know, talking about the higher powers again, just get back to the simple things, you know, pouring libation, talking, you know, feeding the aspects of yourself, you know, and then going from there. So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's really tough as a teacher too, because you know what's going on, you can see it, you can feel it, because, you know, the angst is coming at you. But then some of my teachers, and my teacher, for example, you know, he will say that, you know, sometimes even black people would prefer to listen to a white guy, for example, than to listen to him coming from Africa. There's something going on there that is worth looking into. Similar thing. You know, there's a judgment that's going on, and it's missing the point, which is actually, what is it that is being brought? What is it that's being shared? Where does it come from? How does that relate to reality? How does that relate to you? You know, and then step forward with that. Simple.
So, do you have anything to add, Jahzra?
I mean, it just seems like a distraction, because if you sought out the Kemetic, you know, knowledge or the organization because there was something you wanted to do, like enlighten yourself or return to your ancestral culture, and then you let the skin color of one person, or even when you're in it, the personality or the doings of one person distract you from that, you already fell to the colonizer's way. You already turned your back on yourself. You sabotaged yourself. So it simply seems like just an excuse or a distraction to maybe divert yourself from really doing the work that needs to be done, which, you know, you talked about hejta. I mean, if seeking enlightenment is not an easy thing. It's a lonely struggle, and it takes like days of facing challenges and suffering. And if you aren't ready to face that, there's all kinds of excuses and distractions that, you know, we can find. And if Biksaa is my teacher and I say it's because of him that I can't do it, I've lost.
So, I know Suave Armstrong is still in the comments and is feeling very upset. And like Suave, I would just say that if you wanna make an omelet, you gotta break some eggs. And if you are feeling a certain aversion to maybe the way somebody has responded to you, or even, I know I said I was gonna go off, right? And the thing is Suave, if you're coming with a certain kind of energy, you gotta understand that sometimes emotionality is not the way you're talking. Emotionality or emotion is not the way you can classify it as, you know, what is easy to classify from the eye. You can be emotional in thought, and then you can be speaking very monotone, very calmly, very nonchalantly, and then you can be thinking emotionally. Because emotion doesn't necessarily mean that it's lively. It looks different. And you can be internalizing an emotional approach and then thinking that you're not emotional because you appear to be very detached and unemotional. So I would challenge you as a listener and somebody that's here listening to challenge how you think and how you're approaching things and what you view as the norm. And from there, I would say, give yourself a chance. Give yourself a chance to reclaim something that maybe doesn't make you feel comfortable. because a true friend is somebody that's not going to allow you to become less than yourself. And we like to call friends people that allow you to become less than yourself. And that means that if you want to go out and do crack, if you want to go out and, just like go out on a binge with hookers and drugs and all this kind of stuff, like a friend is somebody that would be like, yeah, Craig, high five. Keep going out there and, doing crack and having this binge with these hookers. And then you're going to be like, yeah, man, that's a real friend. And then the person that's like, Craig, go get a job. Craig, stop. You're going to look at that person, you're going to be like, that's not a friend. Because you don't support me in my descent into oblivion. And that's something to look at. We're not going to cater to you, Suave. We're not going to cater to your emotions. That's not what you're going to find here. Like, that's the reason why, like, we're kind of real, for lack of a better term, is because we don't cater to anybody's emotions and anyone's, predilections of how they want to be treated. If there's something that needs to be said, we're going to say it. And isn't that what realness is? So, I would encourage you to understand the difference and to know that no one here is looking to shoot you down, and everyone here is looking to maybe encourage you to get out of the darkness that you might be in. So if you're out there doing crack and going out on binges with hookers, we're here to tell you that's not a good thing. And stop. And that may feel uncomfortable. So that kind of like conflict that you feel, it could be normal and it could be natural. And, I know that might not be the best example, hookers and binges and, whatever. But there's been so much wisdom that's been bestowed upon you and all of the listeners from Jahzra and from Biksaa and from Kaja's Riemann or myself, including hooker analogies. And we just want you to learn, and we want you to find the light to lead you back to yourself. And that light is your ancestors. So if you can find that, good for you. But if you can't find that, then there's still more work to do, and there's still more things to find. And with that, this has been another episode of the Gated Gates podcast. We appreciate you for tuning in. We appreciate you for being here. We know you could be anywhere, but you're here. We have so many events coming up. We have a talk at Weeksville where I will be there. So if you're looking for me, I'll be there. You can come and find me. All of you that have been asking, that's where I'll be on Saturday at 1 o'clock at the Weeksville Heritage Center in Brooklyn. So come find me. Come talk. Let's talk. Let's find ways to connect with one another. And for those of you that maybe aren't looking for me, we have a wonderful event starting tomorrow, and that's going to be here in Salt Point, New York. We have a Dogon retreat. It's the first ever retreat that we're doing on U.S. soil. So you're going to be able to experience Dogon indigenous practices here on U.S. soil. And there's a lot of people that are looking at me like, don't say that, because I know we're already kind of sold out. But if you feel called, we will answer. So one of the organizers is looking at me right now, and she's like, no. But yet, if you feel called, we'll be here, and you're more than welcome to attend. We have locations on many different continents. We have we have 2 locations in Canada. We have a location in Montreal. We have a location in Toronto. We have 2 locations in the UK. We have a location in Coventry. as Biksaa is so graciously joining us from. We have a location in London, and we have a location in Baltimore. Now I'm talking about the U.S. locations. We have a location in Baltimore. We have a location in Houston. We have a location in Chicago. Chicago is our headquarters in the U.S. Obviously, we have a location in New Jersey, and we also have a location in upstate New York, in Salt Point, New York. And we have many temples in Merita. We have a location in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. That's our headquarters in Merita. And we have many other temples that we are aligned with throughout Merita. So please, 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 don't allow the short-sightedness that the colonizer has put in front of you in terms of looking at the person to your left or the person to your right as being the detriment to you reclaiming yourself, because there's so much work to do. And if we don't take the time to do the work on ourselves, we will be forever lost. And the ancestors on the other side, they don't see color. Jahzra's ancestors, my ancestors, his ancestors, all jokes aside, his ancestors might have even colonized all of our ancestors and did it very horribly, where they didn't even learn how to spice food. And yet, we're here to say to you that we're able to look past our differences to find a better way. And hopefully one day, we pray that you will find a better way to understand that it's not about the physical. It's about your spirit. And it's about bringing your spirit out of the darkness, and all the ancestors that have stood before you on this earth to bring you forth to even exist on this planet. So please check us out. There's so many resources. theearthcenter.org, risingfirefly.org, our sister organization, anhlife.org. If you're only tuning in because you or whoever it is, or whatever it is, or you're looking for the white guy that was at the event with us, or whoever it is, whatever it is, there's so much more. And we invite you to learn, and we invite you to enlighten yourself. And if you haven't, that's what we're here for. Give us a call. Reach out to any of our locations. Reach out to any of us through email, on social media, and we will be glad to engage with you and to show you the way back to your ancestors, which are in turn you. This has been another episode of the Gated Gates podcast. We thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you continue to tune in. Jahzra, don't take your headphones off. We're not done just yet. Have a good night, and may your ancestors continue to bless you and guide you.